Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Shri Bhagavan Shri Krishna ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari 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 Bol. So we're reading from the Krishna book. A summary study of Srila Vyasadeva Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto. Translation by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. And we're reading from chapter 18, King of the Demon, Pralambashvara. After extinguishing the devastating fire, Lord Krishna, surrounded by his relatives, friends, cows, calves, and bulls, and glorified by his friends, singing again and again, entered Vrindavan, which is always full of cows. While Krishna and Balaram were enjoying life in Vrindavan, in the midst of the cowherd boys and girls, the season gradually changed to summer. The summer season in India is not very much welcome because of the excessive heat. But in Vrindavan, everyone was pleased because summer there appeared like spring. This was possible only because Lord Krishna and Balaram, who are the controllers of even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, were residing there in Vrindavan. There in Vrindavan there are many falls which are always pouring water, and the sound is so sweet that it covers the sound of the crickets. And because the water flows all over the forest, it always looks very green and beautiful. The inhabitants of Vrindavan are never disturbed by the scorching heat of the sun or the high summer temperatures. The lakes of Vrindavan are surrounded by green grasses, and various kinds of lotus flowers bloom there, such as the Kalara, Kanja, Utpala, and the air blowing in Vrindavan carries the aromatic pollen of those lotus flowers. When the particles of water from the waves of the Jamuna and lakes and the waterfall touch the bodies of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they automatically feel a cooling effect. Therefore, they were practically undisturbed by the summer season. Vrindavan is such a nice place. His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj told me some time ago. He said, "You know what the best thing in the whole of this Krishna book is?" I said, "No." And he said, "This verse, Vrindavan is such a nice place." He said, "I consider that nicest thing in Srimad Bhagavatam. Vrindavan is such a nice place. Flowers are always blooming, and there are even various kinds of decorated deer. Birds are chirping, peacocks are crowing and dancing, the bees are humming, and the cuckoos there sing nicely in 5 kinds of tunes. Krishna, the reservoir of pleasure, blowing his flute, accompanied by his elder brother Balaram and the other cowherd boys and cows, entered the beautiful forest of Vrindavan to enjoy the atmosphere. They walked into the midst of the newly grown leaves of trees, whose flowers resembled peacock feathers. They were garlanded by those flowers and decorated with saffron chalk. Sometimes they were dancing and singing, sometimes wrestling with one another. While Krishna danced, some of the cowherd boys sang, and others played on their flutes and bugled on their buffalo horns, or clapped their hands praising Krishna. Dear brother, you are dancing very nicely. Actually, all these boys were demigods descending from the higher planets to assist Krishna in his pastimes. The demigods, garbed in the dress of cowherd boys, were encouraging Krishna in his dancing, just as one artist encouraged another with praise. Up to that time, neither Krishna and Balaram had undergone the hair-cutting ceremony. Therefore, their hair was clustered like crow's feathers. They were always playing hide and seek with their boyfriends or jumping or fighting with them. Sometimes, while his friends were chanting and dancing, Krishna would praise them. My dear friends, you are dancing and singing very nicely. The boys played at catching ball with fruits such as bale and amalaka. They played blind man's buff, challenging one another and to touch one another. Sometimes they imitated the forest deer and the various kinds of birds. They joked with one another by imitating croaking frogs, and they would enjoy swinging underneath the trees. Sometimes they would play the part of a king and his subjects among themselves. In this way, Balaram and Krishna, along with all their friends, played all kinds of sports and enjoyed the soothing atmosphere of Vrindavan, full of rivers, lakes, rivulets, fine trees, and excellent gardens filled with fruits and flowers. Once, while the boys were engaged in the transcendental pastime, a great demon of the name Pralambasura entered their company, desiring to kidnap both Balaram and Krishna. Although Krishna was playing the part of a cowherd boy, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could understand everything past, present and future. So when Pralambasura entered their company, Krishna began to think how to kill this demon. But externally he received him as a good friend. Oh, my dear friend, he said, it's very good you have come to take part in our pastimes. Krishna then called all of his friends and ordered them, now we shall play in pairs. We shall challenge one another in pairs. With this proposal, the boys assembled together. Some took the side of Krishna and some took the side of Balaram, and they arranged to play in a duel. The defeated members in duel fighting had to carry the victorious members on their backs, as a horse carries his master. They began playing, and at the same time they tended the cows as they proceeded through the Bandiravana forest. The party of Balaram, accompanied by Sridhama and Vrishava, came out victorious, and Krishna's party had to carry them on their backs through the Bandiravana forest. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, being defeated, had to carry Sridhama on his back, and Bhadrasen carried Vrishava. Imitating their play, Pralambasura, who appeared there as a cowherd boy, carried Balaram on his back. Pralambasura was the greatest of the demons, and he calculated that Krishna was the most powerful of all the cowherd boys. To avoid the company of Krishna, Pralambasura carried Balaram far away. The demon was undoubtedly very strong and powerful, but he was carrying Balaram, who is compared to a mountain, and therefore he began to feel the burden and thus assumed his real form. When he appeared in his real feature, he was decorated with a golden helmet and earrings and looked just like a cloud with lightning carrying the moon. Balaram observes the demon's body was expanding up to the limits of the clouds, his eyes dazzling like blazing fire and his mouth flashing with sharpened teeth. At first Balaram was surprised at this demon's appearance, and then he began to wonder, how is it all of a sudden this carrier has changed in every way? But with a clear mind, he could quickly understand that he was being carried away from his friends by a demon who intended to kill him. Immediately, he struck the head of the demon with his own strong fist, just as the king of the heavenly planets strikes a mountain with his thunderbolt. Just being stricken by the fist of Balaram, the demon fell down dead, just like a snake with a smashed head, and blood poured from his mouth. When the demon fell, he made a tremendous sound. It sounded like a great hill were falling and all were being struck by the thunderbolts of Indra. All the boys then rushed to the spot, astonished by the ghastly scene. They began to praise Balaram with the words, "Well done, well done." All of them then embraced Balaram with great affection, thinking that he had returned from death. And they offered their blessings and congratulations. All of the demigods in the heavenly planets became very satisfied and showered flowers on the transcendental body of Balaram. And they also offered their blessings and congratulations for his having killed the great demon, Pralambasura. That sends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 18th chapter of Krishna, killing of the demon Pralambasura. Chapter 19, Devouring the Forest Fire. While Krishna, Balaram and their friends were engaged in the pastimes described above, the cows, being unobserved, began to wander off on their own, entering further and further into the deepest part of the forest, allured by fresh grasses. The goats, cows and buffaloes traveled from one forest to another and entered into the forest known as Ishikatavi. This forest was full of green grass, and therefore they were allured. But when they entered, they saw there had been a forest fire, and they began to cry. On the other side, Balaram and Krishna, along with their friends, could not see their animals, and they became aggrieved. They began to trace out the cows by following their footprints, as well as the path of the eaten grass. All the boys were fearing for their very means of livelihood. The cows were now lost. When searching out the cows in the forest, they themselves became very tired and thirsty. However, they heard the crying of their cows. Krishna began to call the cows by their respective names with a great noise. Upon hearing Krishna calling, the cows immediately replied with joy. But by this time, the forest fire had surrounded all of them. The situation appeared very fearful. The flames increased and the wind blew very quickly. It appeared that everything movable and immovable would be devoured. All the cows and boys became very frightened, and they looked towards Balaram and Krishna the way a dying man looks at the picture of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They said, my dear Krishna, you and Balaram are very powerful. We are now burning from the heat of this blazing fire. Please, let us take shelter of your lotus feet. We know you can protect us from this great danger. Oh dear friend Krishna, We are your intimate friends. It is not right that we suffer in this way. We're all completely dependent upon you, and you are the knower of all religious life. We do not know anyone except you. The personality of Godhead, hearing the appealing voices of his friends, and casting a pleasing glance over them, he began to answer by speaking through his eyes. He impressed upon his friends there was no cause of fear, and he assured them, don't worry. Then Krishna, the supreme mystic, the powerful personality of Godhead, immediately swallowed up all the flames of the fire. The cows and boys were thus saved from the imminent danger. Out of fear, the boys were almost unconscious, but when they regained their consciousness and opened their eyes, they saw that they were again in Bandira forest with Krishna and Balaram and the cows. They were astonished to see how they were completely freed from the attack of the blazing fire, and that all the cows were saved. They secretly thought that Krishna must not be an ordinary boy, but must be some demigod. In the evening, Krishna and Balaram, along with the boys and cows, returned to Vrindavan, playing their flutes. As they approached the village of the gopis became very joyous. Throughout the day, the gopis used to think of Krishna while he was in the forest, and in his absence, they were considering one moment to be like 12 years. And thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 19th chapter of Krishna devouring the forest flower. This is chapter 20, description of autumn. The killing of Prambhashura and the devouring of the forest fire by Krishna and Balaram became household topics in Vrindavan. The cowherd men described these wonderful activities to their wives and everyone else, and they were struck with wonder. They concluded Krishna and Balaram were demigods who had kindly come to Vrindavan to become their children. In this way, the rainy season ensured. In India, after the scorching heat of the summer, the rainy season is very welcome. The clouds illuminating in the sky, covering the sun and the moon, became very pleasing to the people, and they expect rainfall at every moment. After summer, the event of the rainy season is considered to be a life-giving source for everyone. The thunder and occasional lightning are also pleasurable to the people. The symptom of a saintly person is that they may be compared to the symptoms of the living entity who are covered by the three modes of material nature. The unlimited sky is like the Supreme Brahman, and the tiny living entities are like the covered sky, or Brahman covered by the three modes of material nature. Ordinarily, everyone is a part and parcel of Brahma. The Supreme Brahman, or the unlimited sky, can never be compared. The Supreme Brahman, or the unlimited sky, can never be covered by the clouds, but a portion of it can be covered. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they are only an insignificant portion of the Supreme Lord. This portion is covered by the modes of material nature, and therefore the living entities are residing within the material world. The Brahmajyoti, spiritual effulgence, is just like the sunshine. As the sunshine is full of molecular shining particles, so the Brahmajyoti is full of minute portions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Out of that unlimited expanse of minute portions of the Supreme Lord, some are covered by the influence of material nature, whereas others, they are free. Clouds are accumulated in water drawn from the land by the sunshine. Continually for 8 months the sun evaporates all kinds of water on the surface of the globe, and this water is accumulated in the shape of clouds, which are distributed as water when there is need. Similarly, a government extracts various taxes from the citizens, while the citizens are able to pay their different material activities, agricultural, trade and industry. Thus, the government can also exact taxes in the form of income tax and sales tax. This is compared to the sun's drawing water from the earth. When there is again need of water on the surface of the globe, the same sunshine converts the water into clouds and distributes it all over the globe. Similarly, the tax collected by the government men must be distributed to the people again as educational work, public work, sanitary work, etc. This is very essential for a good government. The government should not only exact taxes for useless squandering, the tax collection should be utilized for public welfare of the state. During the rainy season, there are strong winds blustering all over the country and carrying clouds from one place to another to distribute life-giving water to the needy living entities. When water is urgently needed after the summer, season, the clouds are just like a rich man who in times of need distributes his money, even by exhausting his whole treasury. So the clouds exhaust themselves by distributing water all over the surface of the globe. When Maharaj Dasaratha, the father of Lord Ramachandra, used to fight with his enemies, it is said that he approached them just like a farmer uprooting unnecessary plants and trees. And when there was a need of giving charity, he used to distribute money exactly as the cloud distributes rain. The distribution of rain by cloud is so sumptuous that it is compared to the distribution of wealth by great munificent persons. The cloud's downpour is sufficient. The cloud's downpour is so sufficient that it rains even on the rocks and hills, and on the oceans and seas where there is no need of water. The cloud resembling a charitable person who opens his treasury for distribution and who does not discriminate whether the charity is needed or not. He gives in charity open-handedly. Before the rainfall, the whole surface of the globe becomes almost depleted of all kinds of energies and appears very lean. After the rainfall, the whole surface of the globe becomes green with vegetation and appears to be very healthy and strong. Here a comparison is made to persons undergoing austerities for fulfillment of material desires. The flourishing condition of the earth after the rainy season is compared to the fulfillment of material desires. Sometimes when a country is subjected by an undesirable government, persons and parties undergo severe austerities and penances to get control of the government. And when they gain control, they flourish them by giving themselves generous salaries. This temporary profit is like flourishing of the earth in the rainy season. Actually, one has to undergo severe austerities and penance only to achieve spiritual happiness. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is recommended that the pasya or austerities should be given only for realizing the Supreme Lord. By accepting austerities in devotional service, one regains his spiritual life. And as soon as one regains his spiritual life, he enjoys unlimited spiritual bliss. But if someone undertakes austerities and penances for some material gain, but if someone undertakes austerities for material penances for some material gain, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita that the results are temporary and that they are desired by persons of less intelligence. During the rainy season in the evening, there are many glowworms visible about the tops of the trees, hither and thither, and they glitter just like lights. But the luminaries of the sky, the stars and the moon, are not visible. Similarly, in the age of Kali, persons who are atheists or miscreants become very prominently visible, whereas persons who are actually following the Vedic principle for spiritual emancipation are practically obscured. This age, Kali Yuga, is compared to the cloudy season of the living entity. In this age, real knowledge is covered by the influence of material advancement of civilization. The cheap mental speculators, atheists, and manufacturers of so-called religious principles become prominent like the glowworms, whereas persons strictly following the Vedic principle or the scriptural injunctions become covered by the clouds of the age. People should learn to take advantage of the actual luminaries in the sky, the sun, moon, and the stars, instead of a glowworm's light. The sun, moon, and stars. Actually, the glowworms cannot give any light in the darkness of night. As the cloud sometimes clear, even in the rainy season, and sometimes the moon and the stars become visible. So even in this Kali Yuga, there are sometimes advantages. For example, sometimes Lord Chaitanya Vedic movement of distributing the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra is heard. People seriously engaged to find real light should take advantage of this movement instead of looking to the light of the mental speculators or atheists. After the first rainfall, when there is thundering sound in the clouds, all the frogs begin to croak, like students suddenly engaged in reading their studies. Similarly, students are generally supposed to rise up early in the morning. They do not usually want to. They usually do not want to of their own accord, however, only when there is a big bell sounded in the temple or other spiritual institution. By the order of the spiritual master, they immediately rise, and after finishing their morning duties, they sit down to study the Vedas or chant Vedic mantras. Everyone is sleeping in the darkness of Kali Yuga, but when there is a great acharya, by his calling only, everyone takes to the study of the Vedas. This is everyone is sleeping in the darkness of the age of Kali, but when there is a great acharya, by his calling only, everyone takes to the study of the Vedas. I often think, when I read this verse, I think of how Srila Prabhupada came here. And as it says here, by his calling, again, everyone takes to the study of the Vedas. So it was like that. There was a feeling, there was a mood that something was there. A calling, a beckoning, and thousands of people, especially from America, they were coming to India seeking spiritual life. It was a phenomenon. Even the Indian government couldn't understand why thousands of people are coming. It was during the hippie period. They couldn't understand what was going on. But there was that search. They were all, so many of them were seekers, seeking the truth, and they were flocking to India, thousands and thousands of. So that was due to the presence of Prabhupada. That's my estimation. Due to Prabhupada being present on this planet, he attracted all those. He pushed the consciousness right up, and that feeling of what is it everybody went to was searching for that feeling, which was truth, the truth laid down by Prabhupada and the Vedic knowledge. Just like when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared here 500 years ago, the whole consciousness was pushed up, the whole world consciousness. In Europe at that time, 500 years ago, was what they call the Renaissance period. It was a great period when all great artists come, great musicians, great big churches and cathedrals were built. It was all, everything was centered around God and the music. Mahaprabhu was here in India, he just pushed the whole consciousness up. So similarly when Prabhupada came here, he just, by his presence, he pushed the whole consciousness up. And those who were fortunate and they could be aware of this presence, this calling, and they began to seek the higher truth. Everyone is sleeping in this darkness of the age of Kali, but when there is a great Acharya, by his calling only, everyone takes to the study of the Vedas to acquire more actual knowledge. During the rainy season, many small ponds, lakes and rivulets become filled with water. Otherwise, the rest of the year they remain dry. Similarly, materialistic persons are dry, but sometimes, when they are in a so-called opulent position, with a home or children, or a little bank balance, they appear to be flourishing. But immediately afterwards they became dry again, just like the small rivulets and ponds. The poet Vidyapati said that the society of friends, family, children, wife, etc., there is certainly some pleasure, but that pleasure is compared to a drop of water in the desert. Everyone is hankering after happiness. Just as in the desert everyone is hankering after water. If in the desert there is a drop of water, it may be, of course, said that water is there, but the benefit of that drop of water is very insignificant. In our materialistic way of life, it's just like a desert. We are hanging after an ocean of happiness, but in the form of society, friendship, and mundane love, we are getting no more than a drop of water. Our satisfaction is never achieved. As the small rivulets and lakes and ponds are never filled with water in the dry season. Due to rainfall, the grass, trees, and other vegetation look very green. Sometimes the grass is covered by a certain kind of red insect, and when the green and red combine with the umbrella-like mushrooms, the entire scene changes, just like a person who has suddenly become rich. The farmer then becomes very happy to see his field full of grains, but the capitalists, who are always unaware of the activities of the supernatural power, become unhappy because they are afraid of competitive price due to abundant production. In some places, certain capitalists in government restrict the farmers' production of grain, not knowing the actual fact is that all food grains are supplied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to the Vedic injunction, Ko Bahunam Jo Vidhati Kamam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead maintains this creation. Therefore, he arranges for a supply of whatever is required for all living entities. When there is a population increase, it is the business of the Supreme Lord to feed the people. But atheists or miscreants do not like abundant production of food grains, especially if their business may be hampered. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram. Bhagavan Shri Krishna ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Krishna book ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you. Come tomorrow night for a continuing story.